Right now, at this exact moment, 100 trillion neutrinos are passing through your body. Every second. They are streaming through your skin, through your muscles, through your bones, through the neurons of your brain, through the DNA in every cell. They pass through you the way light passes through glass, except that glass at least slows light down. Neutrinos are not slowed. They are not deflected. They are not absorbed. They pass through the atoms of your body as if those atoms were not there, as if you were not there, as if the entire Earth were not there, because they pass through the Earth too, right through it, all the way through. The planet that stops meteorites, that traps light, that holds oceans in its gravitational grip is, to a neutrino, as transparent as empty space. 100 trillion per second. Through you, through the floor beneath you, through the planet beneath the floor, through the other side of the Earth, out into space, gone, and you feel nothing, absolutely nothing. You have never felt a neutrino. No human being has ever felt a neutrino. No living creature in the history of life on Earth has ever been affected by the 100 trillion per second bombardment that has been ongoing since the moment the sun ignited 4.5 billion years ago. This is the neutrino, the ghost particle, the most abundant massive particle in the universe and the most invisible, the particle that passes through everything and interacts with almost nothing, the particle that should not exist, that was invented as a desperate mathematical trick that took 26 years to detect, and that when it was finally found, turned out to break the most successful theory in the history of physics. Every major religion describes a reality beyond the visible, a hidden world that permeates the physical world but cannot be perceived by the senses. Christianity calls it the realm of the spirit. Buddhism calls it sunyata, the emptiness that underlies all form. Islam calls it al-ghaib, the unseen. Hinduism calls it Brahman, the invisible ground of all being. The neutrino is the physical particle that most closely matches these descriptions. It is real, it is everywhere, it passes through everything, and it is almost completely undetectable. The ghost in the machine of the universe. The story of the neutrino begins with a crisis, and like all the best stories in physics, it begins with something going missing. In the early 20th century, physicists were studying a phenomenon called beta decay, a type of radioactive decay in which a neutron inside an atomic nucleus transforms into a proton, emitting an electron in the process. The physics was straightforward. The neutron has a certain mass. The proton and the electron together have a certain mass. The difference in mass should be converted into kinetic energy, the energy of motion carried by the emitted electron. Energy conservation demands it. Every electron emitted should carry the same amount of energy, but they did not. When physicists measured the energy of the emitted electrons, they found a continuous spectrum. Some electrons carried a lot of energy, some carried very little, some carried almost none. The energy was not fixed, it varied, and when they added up the energy of the electron and the energy of the recoiling nucleus, the total was less than the energy of the original neutron. Energy was disappearing, vanishing, unaccounted for. This was not a minor discrepancy. This was a violation of the most fundamental principle in physics, the conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can change form, kinetic to potential, chemical to thermal, mass to radiation. But the total amount of energy in an isolated system never changes. Never. This law had been tested in every domain of physics for 200 years. It had never failed. It was the one principle that every physicist trusted absolutely, the golden thread running through mechanics, thermodynamics, electromagnetism, and every other branch of the science. and beta decay was cutting that thread. If energy was not conserved in beta decay, then energy was not conserved at all. And if energy was not conserved, then the entire edifice of physics, every equation, every prediction, every technology built on those predictions was built on sand. The atomic bomb would not work. Power plants would not function. Chemistry would be approximate. The universe would be unpredictable in the most fundamental sense, not because of quantum uncertainty, but because the bookkeeping of nature itself was broken. Niels Bohr, the great Danish physicist, the architect of quantum mechanics, the Nobel laureate who had revolutionized our understanding of the atom, was willing to accept this conclusion. In 1930, Bohr proposed that energy conservation might simply fail at the subatomic level, that the law of conservation of energy tested, verified, relied upon for 2 centuries might be wrong, might be approximate, might break down in the quantum realm. Wolfgang Pauli was not willing to accept this. Pauli, the Austrian theoretical physicist known for his sharp intellect and even sharper tongue, the man who once dismissed a colleague's paper as not even wrong, who was feared at conferences for his ability to find the fatal flaw in any argument, within minutes found Bohr's proposal unacceptable. Energy conservation was not negotiable. It was the bedrock, the one law that had never failed, the one principle that connected every branch of physics into a single coherent framework. If energy conservation fell, everything fell. Pauli would rather invent a particle that could not be detected than surrender the principle that held physics together. On the 4th of December 1930, Pauli wrote a letter to a conference of physicists in Tübingen, Germany. He could not attend in person. He was at a ball in Zurich, and as he later explained, the ball was indispensable. The letter began with one of the most famous salutations in the history of science: "Dear radioactive ladies and gentlemen," and in it he proposed what he called a desperate remedy. There must be, he argued, a new particle, a particle with no electric charge, with extremely small mass, with spin 1/2, with the ability to escape from atomic nuclei without being detected by any existing instrument. This particle, he suggested, was carrying away the missing energy. It was there, it was real, but it was invisible. Pauli called his hypothetical particle the neutron, a name that would later be given to an entirely different particle. When James Chadwick discovered the actual neutron in 1932, a heavy, neutral particle inside the nucleus, the great Italian physicist Enrico Fermi renamed Pauli's ghost particle the neutrino, the little neutral one, the diminutive, the whisper. Pauli was deeply uncomfortable with his own proposal. A particle that could not be detected was, to a physicist, dangerously close to a particle that did not exist. How do you prove the existence of something that passes through everything, interacts with nothing and leaves no trace? Pauli reportedly said, "I have done a terrible thing. I have postulated a particle that cannot be detected." He wagered a case of champagne that no one would ever find it. He would lose that bet. But it would take 26 years. The problem of detecting a neutrino is, on the face of it, impossible. A neutrino interacts with matter through the weak nuclear force, the feeblest of the 4 fundamental forces of nature, 1,000,000,000,000 times weaker than the electromagnetic force that holds atoms together. The probability that a neutrino will interact with any given atom is so small that a single neutrino could pass through a wall of lead, 1 light year thick, 10 trillion kilometers of solid lead, and emerge on the other side unscathed. The vast majority of neutrinos that have ever been produced by the Sun, by supernovae, by the Big Bang itself, will travel across the entire observable universe without interacting with a single atom. They will travel forever, through everything, touching nothing. To detect a neutrino, you need 2 things: an overwhelming number of neutrinos, and an enormous amount of target material. You cannot detect a single neutrino passing through a single atom. The probability is too small. But if you have trillions of neutrinos passing through trillions of atoms, the statistics shift. 1 in every 10 billion trillion neutrinos might interact. Might. And if your detector is sensitive enough, you can catch that one interaction. Frederick Rines and Clyde Cowan, two American physicists working at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, decided to attempt the impossible. They positioned their detector next to the Savannah River nuclear reactor in South Carolina. A nuclear reactor is, among other things, a prolific source of neutrinos. The fission reactions inside the core produce approximately 50 trillion neutrinos per second per square centimeter at the detector's location. Rines and Cowan built a detector consisting of large tanks of water mixed with cadmium chloride, surrounded by scintillation detectors that could detect the faint flashes of light produced when a neutrino, on extraordinarily rare occasion, interacted with a proton in the water. The signature they were looking for was specific. A neutrino striking a proton would produce a positron and a neutron. The positron would immediately annihilate with an electron, producing 2 gamma rays. The neutron would be captured by a cadmium nucleus microseconds later, producing another burst of gamma rays. 2 flashes, separated by a precise time interval. This double flash was the fingerprint of a neutrino interaction, a signal that could not be mimicked by any other process. In June 1956, after years of preparation, calibration, and agonizing effort to reduce background noise, cosmic rays, natural radioactivity, vibrations from the reactor itself, all of which could mimic the neutrino signal, Rines and Cowan sent a telegram to Pauli. "We are happy to inform you that we have definitely detected neutrinos." Pauli, by all accounts, opened the case of champagne he owed. The detection rate was approximately 3 neutrino events per hour. 3 per hour. Out of the 50 trillion neutrinos per second per square centimeter streaming from the reactor. The vast, overwhelming, incomprehensible majority passed through the detector as if it were empty space. But 3 per hour, 3 ghostly double flashes in a tank of water were enough. 3 per hour was the whisper of reality confirming that the invisible world is real. Rines received the Nobel Prize in 1995, nearly 4 decades after the detection. Cowan had died in 1974 and could not share it. Pauli had died in 1958, 2 years after receiving the telegram, having lived just long enough to know that his desperate remedy was not desperate at all. It was a description of reality. The invisible particle he had postulated out of mathematical necessity, the particle he feared might be forever undetectable, was as real as the electron, as real as the proton, as real as the chair you are sitting in. More real, in a sense, because there are far, far more neutrinos in the universe than there are atoms in all the chairs that have ever existed. Now let me tell you where the neutrinos that pass through your body come from. Because they come from everywhere, from everything, from the beginning of time itself. The sun is the primary source. In the core of the sun, nuclear fusion converts hydrogen into helium-4 protons, fuse into one helium nucleus, releasing energy and producing neutrinos. Every fusion reaction in the sun's core produces neutrinos. The sun emits approximately 200 trillion neutrinos every second, 2 times 10 to the 38th power every second. And these neutrinos stream outward from the sun's core in every direction, passing through the sun's own mass, 600,000 kilometers of hydrogen and helium, as if the sun were made of nothing. They reach Earth 8 minutes later, the same time it takes light, and pass through the planet as if it were not there. The 100 trillion neutrinos per second passing through your body right now, most of them are solar neutrinos, born in the nuclear furnace at the center of our star. But the sun is not the only source. When a massive star, a star 8 times the mass of the sun or larger, exhausts its nuclear fuel and collapses under its own gravity, it produces a supernova, the most violent explosion in the universe. And here is the astonishing fact: 99% of the energy released in a supernova is carried not by light, not by the spectacular visual explosion, not by the shockwave that destroys everything within light years, but by neutrinos. 99%. The light of a supernova, the light that can briefly outshine an entire galaxy, is the afterthought, the 1%. The real explosion is invisible. The real explosion is neutrinos, a burst of 10 to the 58th neutrinos, released in a matter of seconds, carrying more energy than the sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year lifetime. The universe speaks in neutrinos. Light is the whisper. Neutrinos are the scream. In 1987, a star exploded in the large Magellanic Cloud, a satellite galaxy of the Milky Way, 168,000 light-years away. Supernova 1987A. It was the closest observed supernova since Kepler's supernova in 1604, the first supernova visible to the naked eye in 383 years. And for the first time in history, human-built detectors were ready. 3 neutrino observatories, Kamiokande II in Japan, IMB in Ohio, and Baksan in Russia, detected a total of 24 neutrinos from the explosion. 24. Out of the approximately 10 to the 58th neutrinos the supernova released. Out of the 10 billion neutrinos that passed through every square centimeter of the Earth during the burst, 24 were captured. And those 24 neutrinos arriving over a span of 13 seconds told physicists more about the physics of stellar collapse than decades of optical observation had achieved. The neutrinos from SN 1987A arrived 3 hours before the light. 3 hours. Because neutrinos, being almost massless, travel at nearly the speed of light. And they left the collapsing stellar core immediately while the light had to fight its way out through the layers of exploding stellar material, delayed by the chaos of the explosion itself. The neutrinos were the early warning, the advanced signal, the universe sending its message in the invisible channel before the visible one. Neutrino astronomy was born, and with it, the realization that the universe has been broadcasting in a language we could not hear, through a channel we could not see, since the beginning of time. And there is an even older source, the oldest source of all. The cosmic neutrino background, the neutrino equivalent of the cosmic microwave background, 1 second after the Big Bang, 1 second after the birth of everything, when the universe was still a plasma of quarks and leptons at a temperature of 10 billion degrees, before atoms existed. Before nuclei existed, before light could travel freely, neutrinos decoupled from matter. They stopped interacting with the rest of the universe and began streaming freely through space. These primordial neutrinos have been traveling for 13.8 billion years. They are the oldest messengers in the universe, older than the cosmic microwave background by 380,000 years. The CMB is the oldest light. The cosmic neutrino background is older than the oldest light. It carries information about the state of the universe when it was 1 second old, 1 second after the birth of everything. Before the first atom, before the first nucleus, before the first photon could travel freely. The universe's very first message, and it was written in neutrinos. We have not yet detected the cosmic neutrino background directly. The technology does not yet exist. These neutrinos have been redshifted to incredibly low energies by the expansion of the universe. But we know they are there. They are everywhere. approximately 336 neutrinos per cubic centimeter of space throughout the entire observable universe. They outnumber the atoms in the universe by a factor of 1 billion. The universe contains far more neutrinos than anything else. By number, the universe is made of neutrinos, and there is one more source, the Earth itself. Radioactive elements deep in the Earth's core and mantle: uranium-238, thorium-232, potassium-40, undergo decay processes that produce neutrinos. These geoneutrinos carry information about the composition and temperature of the Earth's interior, information that is otherwise inaccessible, locked beneath thousands of kilometers of rock and iron that no drill has ever penetrated and no seismic wave can fully resolve. The Camland detector in Japan and the Borexino detector in Italy have successfully detected geoneutrinos, neutrinos born in the radioactive decay of elements thousands of kilometers beneath your feet, passing upward through the mantle, through the crust, through the surface, through the soles of your shoes, through your body, and out into space. The Earth is whispering to the cosmos. The whisper passes through you on its way out. You are transparent to the planet's deepest secrets. Here is what makes the neutrino so strange, so different from every other particle in the Standard Model. The neutrino has no electric charge. It does not interact with the electromagnetic force. This means it is invisible to light. You cannot see it, photograph it, or detect it with any electromagnetic instrument. It does not emit photons. It does not absorb photons. It does not reflect photons. It is electromagnetically silent, dark, invisible. A particle that exists in the electromagnetic void. The neutrino has no color charge. It does not interact with the strong nuclear force, the force that holds quarks together inside protons and neutrons, the force that holds atomic nuclei together. The strong force is the most powerful force in nature. The neutrino ignores it entirely. The neutrino interacts only through gravity, which is negligibly weak for a particle with almost no mass, and through the weak nuclear force. The weak force operates only at distances smaller than the diameter of an atomic nucleus, distances of 10 to the minus 18 meters. At any greater distance, the weak force is effectively zero. This means a neutrino must pass within 10 to the minus 18 meters of another particle, closer than the diameter of a proton, to interact. The probability of this happening, for any given neutrino passing through any given atom, is almost zero. And yet, the neutrino has mass, not zero mass. Mass. This was the discovery that shattered the Standard Model, the most successful theory in the history of physics, the theory that predicted the existence of the Higgs boson, that explained 3 of the 4 fundamental forces, that accounted for every particle ever detected in a laboratory with breathtaking precision. The Standard Model predicted that neutrinos were massless, like photons. Massless particles travel at exactly the speed of light. Massless particles do not oscillate. Massless particles are, in a precise mathematical sense, frozen, locked into a single identity forever. But neutrino oscillation, the phenomenon discovered in 1998 by Takaaki Kajita at Super Kamiokande in Japan, and confirmed in 2001 by Arthur MacDonald at the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory in Canada, proved that neutrinos have mass. A particle can only oscillate between different types, can only change identity as it travels if it has mass. And neutrinos oscillate, therefore neutrinos have mass. Therefore the Standard Model is wrong. Not approximately wrong, not wrong in a detail, wrong in a fundamental prediction about one of the most abundant particles in the universe. The theory that got everything else right got the neutrino wrong. And that wrongness, that tiny, almost imperceptible mass, is the first confirmed crack in the most successful edifice in the history of science. The mass is unimaginably small, less than 1/1,000,000th the mass of an electron, which is itself 2,000 times lighter than a proton. The neutrino is the lightest massive particle in the known universe. Almost nothing, almost weightless, almost invisible, almost non-existent. But not quite. That not quite is what makes the neutrino the most important particle in modern physics, because not quite nothing is very different from nothing. And the difference between almost nothing and nothing is the difference between a universe that contains matter and a universe that does not. In the Gospel of John, Jesus describes the Holy Spirit to Nicodemus. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear its sound, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. The wind, invisible, present everywhere, detectable only by its effects, the sound it makes, the things it moves. You cannot see the wind. You cannot hold it. You cannot predict its path. But you know it is there because you feel its consequences. The neutrino is the wind of the particle world, invisible, everywhere, passing through all things, detectable only by the rarest and faintest of consequences, 2 flashes in a tank of water, 24 events from a supernova, 168,000 light-years away, the whisper of the wind, the trace of the untraceable, and the parallel runs deeper than analogy. In Christian theology, the Holy Spirit is not absent from the material world. It permeates the material world. It is present in every place, at every moment, sustaining all of creation, but not in the way that matter is present. Not as a substance that occupies space, as a presence that passes through space, that fills without displacing, that is everywhere without being anywhere in particular. The Church Fathers Basil of Caesarea, Gregory of Nazianzus, Gregory of Nyssa, described the Spirit as the breath of God, the wind of God, the invisible energy that animates all things without being captured by any of them. You do not contain the Spirit. The Spirit passes through you 100 trillion times per second. The universe's ghost particles enact this theology in the language of physics. In the Buddhist tradition, the Heart Sutra declares, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." The physical world of solid objects and definite properties is, at the deepest level, empty. Empty of inherent existence, empty of independent reality, empty of the fixed, permanent substance that our senses perceive. And emptiness is not nothing. Emptiness is form. The absence of inherent existence is itself the ground from which all existence arises. The neutrino is the physical realization of this teaching. It is almost empty, no charge, no color, almost no mass, almost no interaction. It is the closest thing to nothing that still qualifies as something. And yet this almost nothing is the most abundant massive particle in the universe. There are more neutrinos than atoms. The universe, counted by particles, is overwhelmingly made of something that is almost nothing. The diamond, the mountain, the ocean, the star, these are the minority. The majority is ghostly, invisible, almost void. Emptiness is form. Almost nothing is almost everything. The Heart Sutra, written 2,000 years ago, described the composition of the universe more accurately than any physicist before the 20th century. And here is the question that haunts the physicists who study neutrinos, the question that no equation can answer. Why? Why does the universe contain this particle? Why does nature produce something so ghostly, so invisible, so profoundly detached from the material world that it passes through everything without a trace? If the universe were designed for efficiency, if it were a machine built to produce the physical world we see, the atoms and stars and planets and living creatures, the neutrino is unnecessary. Surplus, a cosmic extravagance, The Sun pours the vast majority of its neutrino energy into particles that will never interact with anything, ever, anywhere, for the rest of eternity. The universe broadcasts its most powerful messages, the death screams of collapsing stars, in a language that almost nothing in the cosmos can hear. Why build a universe where the majority of particles are invisible, where the loudest signal is inaudible, where the most common thing is the most hidden thing? Unless the universe is not designed for efficiency, unless the visible world is not the point, unless the material, tangible, detectable world that we see and touch and measure is the surface and the depth, the substance, the overwhelming majority of what exists is invisible, hidden, ghostly, passing through everything without a trace. The neutrino does not suggest this. The neutrino demonstrates it. The universe is mostly invisible, and it always has been. Something invisible passes through you every second. 100 trillion somethings. They carry messages from the core of the sun, from exploding stars, from the first second of creation. They carry the reason you exist, because without neutrinos, the symmetry between matter and antimatter may never have been broken, and the universe may have annihilated itself into pure light before a single atom could form. They are everywhere, they touch nothing, and they changed everything. In the next part, we will discover that these ghost particles do something even stranger than passing through matter. They change their identity. They transform from one type to another as they travel, oscillating between three different forms, never settling on a single identity. And this oscillation, this refusal to be one fixed thing, broke the standard model of physics and opened a door to a deeper reality that we are only beginning to understand. The neutrino has no fixed identity. This is not a metaphor. This is not a poetic interpretation. This is an experimentally verified fact, confirmed by two independent research programs on opposite sides of the planet, awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2015, and considered one of the most important discoveries in the history of particle physics. A neutrino that is born as one type, one flavor, in the language of physics, transforms into a different type as it travels through space. It oscillates, it shifts, it becomes something other than what it was, and then it shifts back, and then again. A continuous, rhythmic transformation, a quantum dance between three identities, never settling, never fixed, never permanently one thing. An electron neutrino leaves the core of the sun. By the time it reaches the Earth 8 minutes later, 150 million kilometers of empty space, it is no longer an electron neutrino. It has become a muon neutrino, or a tau neutrino, or some quantum superposition of all three. The particle that arrives is not the particle that departed, and yet it is not a different particle. It is the same neutrino, the same quantum entity, carrying the same energy, traveling the same path but wearing a different mask, a different identity, a different name. Nothing else in physics does this. No other particle changes its fundamental type as it moves through space. An electron is always an electron. A photon is always a photon. A quark may change color, charge through the strong force, but it remains a quark. The neutrino alone, the ghost, the whisper, the almost nothing, refuses to be one thing. It is the universe's shapeshifter, the particle that will not hold still, the entity that exists in a permanent state of becoming. And this discovery, this simple, quiet, almost accidental discovery, shattered the standard model of physics and opened a door to a deeper reality that we do not yet understand. The story begins in 1968 in a gold mine in South Dakota. The Homestake mine, nearly a mile underground in the town of Leeds, South Dakota, was not an obvious place to do astrophysics. But Ray Davis, a quiet, methodical chemist at Brookhaven National Laboratory, had an idea that required being underground, far underground. deep enough that the rock above would block cosmic rays, the constant rain of high-energy particles from space that would overwhelm any attempt to detect the faint signal he was looking for. Davis wanted to catch neutrinos from the sun. The theory was clear. The sun is powered by nuclear fusion, hydrogen nuclei fusing into helium in the solar core, releasing energy and producing neutrinos. John Buckle, a brilliant young astrophysicist who would become Davis's lifelong collaborator, had calculated exactly how many neutrinos the sun should produce, based on the standard solar model. The number was enormous, and Davis, using a detection method he had spent years developing, planned to count them. His detector was a tank, 100,000 gallons of perchloroethylene dry-cleaning fluid buried nearly a mile underground in a cavern carved from the old gold mine. The choice of location was critical. 1,500 meters of rock overhead filtered out cosmic rays that would overwhelm the detector at the surface. Only neutrinos could reach the tank. The chlorine atoms in the fluid would, on extremely rare occasion, interact with a solar neutrino. The neutrino would convert a chlorine 3,7 atom into an argon 3,7 atom through the weak force. Argon is a noble gas. It does not bond with anything, does not react with anything, floats free in the liquid like a ghost among molecules. Davis could extract the argon atoms using a helium purge system and count them. Each argon atom was the fingerprint of a neutrino interaction. The ghost, leaving behind a single atom as evidence of its passage through 100,000 gallons of liquid. The calculation said he should detect approximately 1 neutrino interaction per day. 1 per day. In a tank the size of a swimming pool, bombarded by billions of trillions of solar neutrinos every second, Davis expected to find 1 argon atom per day. 1 atom in 100,000 gallons. This is equivalent to finding 1 specific grain of sand on a beach, except the grain appears randomly, lasts only 35 days before decaying, and must be extracted from a liquid containing 10 to the 31st other atoms. The calculation said he should detect approximately 1 neutrino interaction per day. 1 per day. Out of the billions of trillions of solar neutrinos streaming through his tank every second, 1 per day was the signal. Everything else was background. Davis ran the experiment for 3 decades, 30 years, the most patient experiment in the history of physics, and his result, confirmed again and again over those 30 years, was devastating. He was detecting only 1/3 of the neutrinos that Buckle's solar model predicted. Not half, not 2/3, 1/3. 2 out of every 3 solar neutrinos were missing. This was the solar neutrino problem, and it was a crisis. There were 2 possible explanations. Either the standard solar model was wrong, our understanding of how the sun works was fundamentally flawed, or something was happening to the neutrinos between the sun and the earth. Something was making them disappear. Not truly disappear, neutrinos cannot be destroyed, any more than energy can be destroyed, but disappear from Davis's detector, become invisible to his specific method of detection. Davis's detector could only see electron neutrinos. The chlorine to argon conversion only works with electron neutrinos, the specific flavor produced in solar fusion. If the electron neutrinos were transforming into a different flavor muon or tau during their 8-minute journey from the sun to the earth, they would pass through Davis's tank without triggering a single reaction. They would be there. They would be real. But they would be undetectable, invisible to the wrong kind of detector, ghosts hiding behind a different mask. This was the hypothesis of neutrino oscillation, first proposed by the Italian-Soviet physicist Bruno Pontecorvo in 1957, well before Davis's experiment. Pontecorvo's life was itself a study in transformation. Born in Italy, trained under Fermi, he defected to the Soviet Union in 1950. at the height of the Cold War, vanishing from the West so completely that British intelligence initially suspected he had been murdered. He resurfaced in Moscow, where he spent the rest of his career, and it was there that he made his most profound contribution: the idea that neutrinos, like the kaons he had studied, might oscillate between different states as they propagate through space. The hypothesis was elegant but radical. In the Standard Model, neutrinos are massless, and massless particles cannot oscillate. The mathematics forbids it. If neutrinos oscillate, they must have mass. And if they have mass, the Standard Model, the most precisely tested theory in the history of science, contains a fundamental error. Pontecorvo proposed this in 1957. It would take 41 years to prove him right. For 30 years, the solar neutrino problem remained unresolved. Davis kept counting. Buckle kept calculating. Other experiments, SAGE in Russia, GALEX in Italy, confirmed Davis's deficit using different detection methods and different target materials. The deficit was real. It was not a flaw in Davis's technique. It was not a statistical fluctuation. It was a fact about the universe. But the cause remained unknown. Theorists debated whether the problem was in the sun. Perhaps the solar model was slightly wrong. Perhaps the core temperature was lower than calculated or in the neutrino. And no one could prove it either way, because no one had a detector that could see what Davis's could not, a detector sensitive to all three flavors, not just one. The resolution came from two places simultaneously, and both involved detectors of staggering ambition. The first was Super Kamiokande, a cathedral-sized detector buried beneath Mount Ikanoyama in the Japanese Alps, 1 kilometer underground. 50,000 tons of ultra-pure water, water so clean that a laser beam can travel 70 meters through it without visible scattering, contained in a cylindrical stainless steel tank, 40 meters tall and 40 meters in diameter. The walls of the tank aligned with 11,146 photomultiplier tubes, hemispherical golden eyes, each 50 centimeters across, each capable of detecting a single photon. When you stand inside Super Kamiokande during maintenance, and there are photographs of this, you are standing inside a sphere of golden light. 11,000 golden eyes staring inward, watching the water, waiting for a ghost to blink. The detector works by watching for Cherenkov radiation, the faint blue glow produced when a neutrino, on extraordinarily rare occasion, strikes a water molecule and produces a charged particle moving faster than the speed of light in water. Light in water travels at about 225,000 kilometers per second, 3/4 of its speed in vacuum. A charged particle produced by a neutrino interaction can briefly exceed this speed, and when it does, it produces a cone of blue light, the optical equivalent of a sonic boom. This Cherenkov cone radiates outward and is captured by the photomultiplier tubes, which record the direction, energy, and timing of the event with extraordinary precision. Each ring of light on the detector wall is a portrait of a neutrino interaction, a ghost caught in the act of touching matter. In 1998, Takaaki Kojita and his team at Super Kamiokande announced a result that changed physics. They were studying atmospheric neutrinos, neutrinos produced when cosmic rays strike the upper atmosphere at 20 kilometers altitude, creating cascading showers of particles that include both electron neutrinos and muon neutrinos. These atmospheric neutrinos rain down on the detector from all directions. Some come from directly above, having traveled just 15 kilometers through the atmosphere. Others come from below, having been produced on the far side of the Earth and traveled 13,000 kilometers through the entire planet to reach the detector from underneath. The Earth is transparent to neutrinos, so both populations arrive, but they have traveled vastly different distances. If neutrinos do not oscillate, the number coming from above and the number coming from below should be identical. The production rate is the same in all directions. Cosmic rays strike the atmosphere uniformly. The only difference between the upward traveling and downward traveling neutrinos is the distance they have covered. If distance does not matter, if the neutrino's identity is fixed, the numbers should match. Kajita found that the numbers did not match. The muon neutrinos coming from below, the ones that had traveled 13,000 kilometers through the Earth, were significantly fewer than the ones coming from directly above. Not slightly fewer, significantly fewer, roughly half as many. The muon neutrinos were disappearing during the journey. The farther they traveled, the more disappeared. And the rate of disappearance was not random. It followed a precise mathematical pattern that was exactly, precisely, quantitatively consistent with Pontecorvo's oscillation hypothesis. The muon neutrinos were not vanishing. They were transforming, oscillating into tau neutrinos during their long journey through the planet. The longer the journey, the more transformation. The neutrino was changing identity as it traveled. The second resolution came from the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory. Snow buried 2 kilometers underground in an active nickel mine in Ontario, Canada. Arthur MacDonald and his team had built a detector that could do what Davis's homestake experiment could not: detect all 3 neutrino flavors simultaneously. SNO used 1,000 tons of heavy water in which the hydrogen atoms are replaced by deuterium, a heavier isotope with 1 proton and 1 neutron in its nucleus. Heavy water is extraordinarily expensive. The Canadian government loaned SNO $300 million worth of it. The deuterium nucleus allowed 3 different types of reactions, each sensitive to different neutrino flavors. The charged current reaction responded only to electron neutrinos. The neutral current reaction responded to all 3 flavors equally: electron, muon, and tau. And the elastic scattering reaction provided a cross-check. For the first time, a single experiment could answer both questions simultaneously. How many electron neutrinos are arriving, and how many total neutrinos are arriving? In 2001 and 2002, MacDonald announced the results in 2 landmark papers. The total number of neutrinos from the Sun, all 3 flavors combined, matched Bahcall's prediction perfectly. The Sun was producing exactly the number of neutrinos the solar model predicted, but only 1/3 of them were arriving as electron neutrinos. The other 2/3 had oscillated into muon and tau neutrinos during the journey. Davis was right, he was seeing only 1/3. Bahcall was right, the Sun was producing the full number. And Pontecorvo was right, the neutrinos were oscillating. The solar neutrino problem, which had haunted physics for 30 years, was solved. And the solution was more revolutionary than the problem. Neutrinos oscillate. Neutrinos have mass. The standard model is incomplete. Kajita and MacDonald shared the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2015. Ray Davis received his Nobel in 2002, shortly before his death in 2006, at the age of 91, having spent the last 38 years of his life counting atoms in a tank of dry cleaning fluid, a mile underground, and having been proven right by the most sophisticated detectors ever built. Now let me explain what neutrino oscillation actually is, because the mechanism is one of the strangest phenomena in quantum mechanics, and it reveals something about the nature of identity itself. In the standard model, there are 3 neutrino flavors: electron neutrino, muon neutrino, and tau neutrino. Each flavor is associated with a corresponding charged particle, the electron, the muon, and the tau. When a neutrino is produced in a nuclear reaction, it is produced as a definite flavor, an electron neutrino in solar fusion, for example. But here is the key insight, the insight that makes oscillation possible. The flavor states are not the same as the mass states. There are also three mass states: neutrino 1, neutrino 2, and neutrino 3, each with a slightly different mass. And the flavor states are quantum superpositions of the mass states. An electron neutrino is not a particle with a definite mass. It is a specific combination, a specific superposition of all three mass states, mixed together in precise proportions described by a mathematical object called the PMNS matrix, Pontecorvo-Maki-Nakagawa-Sakata matrix. When a neutrino travels through space, each mass state travels at a slightly different speed because particles with different masses have different momenta at the same energy. This is a direct consequence of special relativity. The mass differences are tiny fractions of an electron volt, but over distances of kilometers, the effect accumulates. The three mass states gradually get out of phase with each other, like three runners on a track who start together but slowly separate because their strides are slightly different lengths. And because the flavor is determined by the relative phases of the mass states, by how the three runners are positioned relative to each other at any given moment, the flavor changes. The electron neutrino, which was a specific superposition of the three mass states at the moment of creation, gradually becomes a different superposition as the states drift apart. At some distance, the superposition corresponds to a muon neutrino. At a greater distance, a tau neutrino. Then back to electron, then muon again, oscillating, cycling, transforming. An endless quantum dance between three identities, governed by the differences in mass between the three states and the distance traveled. The oscillation wavelength depends on the neutrino's energy and the mass differences between states. For solar neutrinos with energies of a few million electron volts, the oscillation length is roughly 100 kilometers. For atmospheric neutrinos, it is thousands of kilometers. For reactor neutrinos, it is about 1 kilometer. The ghost changes its mask at different rates depending on how much energy it carries. But it always changes, always oscillates, always becomes. The neutrino is never purely one flavor. It is always a mixture, always in transition, always becoming. The electron neutrino that leaves the sun is a convenient label, a snapshot of a quantum state that is continuously evolving. By the time it reaches the Earth, it has been everything: electron, muon, tau, and every quantum superposition in between. The identity is not fixed. The identity is a process. In the Buddhist tradition, the doctrine of anatta, no self, teaches that there is no fixed, permanent, unchanging self. What we call I is not a stable entity but a process, a constantly changing stream of sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and moments of consciousness that arise and pass away in rapid succession. The self is not a thing. It is a verb, a flowing, a becoming. The illusion of a fixed identity is created by the speed of the process, the way the rapid flickering of a movie projector creates the illusion of a continuous image. The neutrino is the physical embodiment of anatta. It has no fixed flavor. Its identity is not a property it possesses, but a process it undergoes. The electron neutrino is not a thing. It is a phase, a temporary configuration of quantum amplitudes that is already changing, already becoming something else. At the moment you name it. To say this is an electron neutrino is like saying this is Tuesday. It is true only for a moment, and the moment is already passing. The Buddhist tradition uses the image of a candle flame pass from one candle to another. Is the flame on the second candle the same flame as the first? It is not. The fuel is different, the position is different, the precise chemical reactions are different. But is it a different flame? It is not. It was lit from the first. It carries the same pattern, the same essential nature. It is neither the same nor different. The question, is it the same flame? is the wrong question. The flame is a process, not a thing. And the question of identity, same or different, applies to things, not to processes. The neutrino oscillating from electron flavor to muon flavor is the flame passing from one candle to another. Is it the same neutrino? Yes, the quantum state is continuous. The energy is conserved. The trajectory is unbroken. Is it a different neutrino? Yes, the flavor has changed. The interaction properties are different. It would register differently in a detector. It is neither the same nor different. It is a process. The question of fixed identity is the wrong question. The Buddha would have recognized the neutrino immediately. The Milinda-Panya, a classical Buddhist text recording a dialogue between the monk Nagasena and King Menanda, addresses the question of identity with a famous chariot analogy. Nagasena asks, "Is the chariot the wheels?" No. The axle? No. The frame? No. The yoke? No. Is the chariot the combination of all these parts? No, because if you disassemble the parts, there is no chariot. The chariot is a convenient designation, a label, applied to a specific arrangement of components. It has no independent existence apart from its parts, and the parts themselves are equally empty of independent existence. Each is a designation applied to a further collection of components, which are themselves designations, all the way down. The neutrino's flavor is the chariot. It is a label applied to a specific quantum superposition of mass states. The mass states are the wheels and axles. But even the mass states are not the neutrino. They are mathematical descriptions of aspects of a quantum field that has no fixed identity at any level. The neutrino is not a thing that oscillates. The neutrino is the oscillation. The process is the particle. The transformation is the identity. In Christianity, the concept of transformation carries a different but equally profound meaning. The transfiguration of Christ, the moment on Mount Tabor when Jesus' appearance changed before his disciples, his face shining like the sun, his garments white as light, represents a transformation of appearance that does not change underlying identity. Jesus remains Jesus. The divine nature was always present. It was simply revealed, made visible, in a form that the disciples could perceive. The transfiguration is not a change of being, it is a change of manifestation. The neutrino's oscillation has this quality. The neutrino does not become a different particle, it becomes a different manifestation of the same underlying quantum state. The mass states, the deep identity, do not change. The flavor, the surface manifestation, the face the neutrino shows to the world changes continuously. The electron neutrino and the muon neutrino are not different beings. They are different faces of the same being, different manifestations of the same underlying quantum reality. The transfiguration is not destruction and recreation, it is revelation. Different aspects of the same truth, revealed at different moments. The Apostle Paul, writing to the Corinthians, spoke of transformation in similar terms. We are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another, not a change of substance, a change of degree, a change of manifestation. The same light, the same underlying reality expressing itself in progressively more radiant forms. The neutrino oscillates from one degree of flavor to another. The substance does not change. The manifestation transforms. The identity is not in the mask. It is in the oscillation itself. There is one more aspect of neutrino oscillation that deserves attention, because it raises a question that physics cannot yet answer. The PMNS matrix, the mathematical object that describes how the flavor states are related to the mass states, contains a parameter called the CP violating phase. CP stands for charge parity, a symmetry that relates particles to their antiparticles. If the CP violating phase is not zero, then neutrinos and antineutrinos oscillate differently. They follow different patterns. They transform at different rates. The universe treats neutrinos and antineutrinos asymmetrically. This matters enormously. Because the universe itself is asymmetric, the Big Bang should have produced equal amounts of matter and antimatter, equal amounts of electrons and positrons, equal amounts of quarks and antiquarks. This is what the symmetry of the fundamental laws demands. Every equation in particle physics treats matter and antimatter identically. And when matter meets antimatter, they annihilate, converting their combined mass into pure energy, into photons. If the Big Bang produced equal amounts, everything should have annihilated. Every electron should have found a positron. Every quark should have found an antiquark. The universe should be empty. Nothing but a cold bath of radiation. No atoms, no stars, no planets, no oceans, no life, no you, no anything. But the universe is not empty. The universe is full of matter. There is a surplus, approximately 1 part in a billion more matter than antimatter survived the annihilation. That tiny surplus, that 1 in a billion asymmetry, is everything. Every atom in your body, every star in the sky, every grain of sand on every beach, on every planet, in every galaxy. All of it exists because of a 1 in a billion imbalance between matter and antimatter in the first moments after the Big Bang. What caused that imbalance? The neutrino might be the answer. If the CP violating phase in the PMNS matrix is large, if neutrinos and antineutrinos oscillate significantly differently, then the asymmetry between matter and antimatter could have been generated by neutrino processes in the early universe, a mechanism called leptogenesis. The neutrino, the ghost, the whisper, the particle that passes through everything without a trace, may be the reason that anything exists at all, the reason the universe is not empty, the reason you are here. The Dune experiment, the deep underground neutrino experiment, currently under construction in the United States, will measure the CP violating phase with unprecedented precision. A beam of neutrinos will be generated at Fermilab near Chicago and fired through 1,300 kilometers of rock through the crust of the Earth itself. No tunnel required, because neutrinos do not need tunnels to a massive detector in the Sanford Underground Research Facility in South Dakota. The same mine, the same rock, the same underground darkness where Ray Davis began his lonely count 6 decades ago. The detector will contain 70,000 tons of liquid, argon cooled to minus 186 degrees Celsius, one of the largest cryogenic vessels ever built. The experiment will compare how neutrinos and antineutrinos oscillate over that 1,300-kilometer journey. If they oscillate differently, if the CP violating phase is large, then leptogenesis becomes the leading explanation for the matter-antimatter asymmetry. And the ghost particle, the almost nothing that passes through everything, may be revealed as the reason anything exists at all. The neutrino changes its face. It oscillates between identities. It refuses to be one fixed thing. And in that refusal, in that constant, restless quantum transformation, it may hold the answer to the deepest question in physics. Why is there something rather than nothing? A particle that is almost nothing, that touches almost nothing, that is never permanently one thing. And yet without it there may be nothing at all. No matter, no stars, no atoms, no you. The ghost wrote the universe into existence, and then it passed through, without leaving a trace. There is a question about the neutrino that has haunted physics for almost a century. A question so fundamental that its answer would reshape our understanding of matter, antimatter, and why the universe exists. The question is this: is the neutrino its own antiparticle? Every particle in the standard model has an antiparticle, a mirror image with the same mass but opposite charge. The electron has the positron, the quark has the antiquark, the proton has the antiproton. When a particle meets its antiparticle, they annihilate, converting their combined mass into pure energy. This symmetry between matter and antimatter is one of the deepest principles in physics, written into the equations of quantum field theory at the most fundamental level. But the neutrino is different. The neutrino has no electric charge. It has no color charge. It has no magnetic moment. It has almost no mass. It is, in every measurable respect, the most featureless particle in the universe, a blank slate, a ghost, with almost no distinguishing marks. And this raises a question that does not arise for any other particle. How do you distinguish a neutrino from an antineutrino? If the neutrino has no charge, no property that can be reversed, what makes the antineutrino anti? In 1937, the Italian physicist Ettore Majorana, a brilliant, enigmatic figure who has become one of the great mysteries of 20th century science, proposed a radical answer. Perhaps there is no distinction. Perhaps the neutrino and the antineutrino are the same particle. Perhaps the neutrino is its own antiparticle, a particle that is simultaneously itself and its opposite, not a particle and an antiparticle coexisting, a single entity that is both at once. Majorana was, by every account, a physicist of extraordinary depth. He published only 9 papers in his career. He was notoriously reluctant to publish, often solving problems and then dismissing the solutions as trivial. Fermi once said that there were several categories of physicists. Some were talented, some were very talented, and then there were people like Majorana who possessed an intuition that bordered on the supernatural. Majorana could solve in his head, in minutes, problems that took others weeks with pen and paper. And in 1937, he published his most famous paper, Teoria Symmetrica del Electrone e del Positrone, a symmetric theory of the electron and positron, in which he demonstrated that a neutral fermion could be its own antiparticle. The paper was 9 pages long. It changed the trajectory of particle physics. 1 year later, Majorana vanished. On the 25th of March 1938, he boarded a ferry from Palermo to Naples. He had withdrawn his entire savings from the bank. He had written a note to his family and another to the director of his institute, both ambiguous, requesting forgiveness but also suggesting he might return. He was never seen again. No body was found. Investigations over the following decades produced no conclusion. Some believe he committed suicide by drowning. Some believe he retreated to a monastery. Some believe he fled to South America in 2011. The Rome Attorney General's office claimed evidence that he had been living in Venezuela in the 1950s. The mystery has never been resolved. The man who proposed that a particle could be its own opposite became his own disappearance, simultaneously alive and dead, present and absent, until observed. This is not wordplay. The Majorana particle is a precise mathematical possibility. In quantum field theory, a Majorana particle is a fermion that is identical to its own charge conjugate. For a charged particle like the electron, this is impossible. The electron has charge -1. The positron has charge +1. They are manifestly different. But the neutrino has no charge to conjugate. The mathematical operation that transforms a particle into its antiparticle changes nothing visible about the neutrino. The question becomes, is that because the operation does nothing because the neutrino and antineutrino are truly identical, or because the difference exists but is hidden, encoded in some subtle quantum number we have not yet measured? If Majorana was right, if the neutrino is its own antiparticle, the consequences are enormous. It would mean that a fundamental symmetry of nature called lepton number conservation is violated. Every known interaction conserves lepton number. The total count of matter leptons minus antimatter leptons never changes. If the neutrino is a Majorana particle, lepton number is not conserved. And if lepton number is not conserved, a process called leptogenesis becomes possible, a mechanism that could generate the matter-antimatter asymmetry in the early universe. The surplus of matter over antimatter, the 1 in a billion excess that produced every atom in your body, could be explained by the Majorana nature of the neutrino. The ghost would be the creator, not despite being its own opposite, but because of it. Ettore Majorana vanished on the 25th of March, 1938. He boarded a ferry from Palermo to Naples and was never seen again. No body was found, no note was found. Enrico Fermi, his mentor, who once compared Majorana's gifts to those of Galileo and Newton, reportedly told the Italian government, "There are several categories of scientists in the world. Those who make it to the second and third rank do their best but never get very far. Then there is the first rank, those who make important discoveries, fundamental to the progress of science. But then there are the geniuses, like Galileo and Newton. Majorana was one of those. The genius vanished. His particle, if it exists, has not yet been found, but the search is one of the most intense in experimental physics. How do you prove that the neutrino is its own antiparticle? You look for something that should be impossible. Neutrinoless double beta decay. Ordinary double beta decay is a known process. Certain atomic nuclei germanium, 7,6, xenon, 136, tellurium, 130, can undergo a decay in which two neutrons simultaneously convert into two protons, emitting two electrons and two antineutrinos. This is the two-neutrino mode. It has been observed. It is extremely rare half-lives of 10 to the 21st years, a billion times the age of the universe, but it happens. The two antineutrinos carry away energy and momentum, and the electrons share the remaining energy in a continuous spectrum, just like ordinary beta decay. But if the neutrino is a Majorana particle, if it is its own antiparticle, then something else can happen. The antineutrino emitted by one decaying neutron can be absorbed by the other decaying neutron, acting as a neutrino rather than an antineutrino. The two neutrinos annihilate each other internally. They never leave the nucleus. The result? Two electrons are emitted, carrying all the energy, with no neutrinos escaping at all. Neutrinoless double beta decay. Zero neutrinos. The ghost cancels itself. The experimental signature is unmistakable. In two neutrino double beta decay, the two electrons share energy randomly. The neutrinos carry away a variable amount. The electron energy spectrum is broad, continuous. In neutrinoless double beta decay, the two electrons carry all the energy, exactly all of it, every time. The electron energy spectrum is a single sharp peak at the total decay energy, a spike, a needle, an unmistakable signal that screams, the neutrino ate itself. No experiment has observed neutrinoless double beta decay, not yet, but the search is ongoing, on a massive scale. The Gerda experiment in Italy used 40 kilograms of enriched germanium, 7,6 crystals, operated deep underground in the Gran Sasso laboratory. Its successor, Legend, is scaling up to 1,000 kilograms, 1 ton of germanium, with sensitivity to half-lives of 10 to the 28th years. The Camlan Zen experiment in Japan uses hundreds of kilograms of xenon, 136 dissolved in liquid scintillator, installed inside the same Camlan detector that first confirmed reactor neutrino oscillation. The NXO experiment is planning 5 tons of enriched xenon in a single liquid xenon detector. The Cupid experiment will use lithium molybdate crystals cooled to near absolute zero, detecting the tiny temperature rise from a single nuclear decay. All of these experiments share a common requirement: extreme silence. The signal, a single sharp energy peak, can be mimicked by background radiation. Cosmic rays produce spurious signals. Natural radioactivity in the detector materials produces spurious signals. Radon in the air produces spurious signals. To find the ghost cancelling itself, you must eliminate every other possible explanation. You must descend into the deepest mines, surround your detector with meters of lead and copper shielding, purify your materials to levels of radio purity never before achieved, and wait. For years, for decades, counting events one by one, looking for the single sharp peak that proves the neutrino is its own antiparticle. There is a resonance here with something the contemplative traditions have always taught. If you want to perceive what is hidden, what passes through the visible world without being seen, you must descend into silence. You must eliminate noise. You must go deep. The Buddhist meditator retreats from sensory stimulation, sitting in silence for hours, days, weeks, waiting for the mind to become still enough to perceive what was always present, but obscured by the noise of ordinary consciousness. The Christian hesychast descends into the silence of the heart through the repetition of the Jesus prayer, layer after layer of mental activity falling away until the uncreated light becomes visible. The Sufi practitioner enters khalwa seclusion, withdrawing from the world to perceive the hidden realities that the noise of daily life obscures. The physicist does the same thing. To find the ghost, you must go underground, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, deeper, into the silence, beneath the rock, beneath the cosmic rays, beneath the radioactive whisper of the earth itself, into the deepest, quietest places on the planet. And there, in the silence, you wait for the ghost to cancel itself, for the hidden to become visible, for the veil to lift. The search continues. The ghost has not yet been caught cancelling itself, but the detectors grow more sensitive every year. And if the signal is found, if neutrinoless double beta decay is observed, it will confirm that the neutrino is the most paradoxical object in the known universe, a particle that is its own opposite, a thing that contains its own negation, a being that is simultaneously itself and not itself. In Christian theology, the doctrine of the hypostatic union holds that Christ is simultaneously fully divine and fully human, two natures, one person, not half divine and half human, not divine sometimes and human other times, fully both at all times, without confusion, without division, without separation. The Council of Chalcedon in 451 declared this as dogma and acknowledged that it was a mystery beyond rational comprehension. How can one being be two opposite things simultaneously? How can the infinite be finite? How can the eternal be temporal? How can the creator be the created? The Majorana neutrino presents the same paradox in the language of physics. How can a particle be its own antiparticle? How can matter be antimatter? How can a thing be its own opposite? If the neutrino is Majorana, it is both at once, not alternating, not approximating, not half and half, fully particle and fully antiparticle, two natures, one entity. The Chalcedonian formula, written in the mathematics of quantum field theory. Now let me take you to the South Pole, because the most ambitious neutrino detector ever built is buried in the ice of Antarctica, and it has opened a window to the most violent events in the universe. IceCube is not a building. It is not a laboratory. It is a cubic kilometer of Antarctic ice, the clearest, most ancient, most pristine ice on the planet, transformed into the largest particle detector ever constructed. The numbers are staggering. 5,160 digital optical modules, basketball-sized glass spheres, each containing a photomultiplier tube and onboard digital electronics deployed on 86 vertical strings. Each string lowered into a hole, drilled 2.5 kilometers deep into the glacial ice sheet at the geographic South Pole. The drilling alone was an engineering miracle. A custom-built hot water drill, the enhanced hot water drill, melted holes in the ice using a jet of near-boiling water delivered through a hose at pressures of over 1,000 pounds per square inch. Each hole took approximately 48 hours to drill. Once the hole was open, the team had a limited window before the water refroze to lower the string of optical modules into the liquid column, positioning each module at a precise depth. Then the water froze around the instruments, entombing them permanently in ice that had not seen sunlight in hundreds of thousands of years. The installation took 7 Antarctic summers, from 2004 to 2010. 7 seasons of working at the most remote, most extreme research station on Earth at an altitude of 2,835 meters, in temperatures reaching minus 60 degrees Celsius, in complete darkness for 6 months of the year. Deep Antarctic ice compressed over millennia, purged of air bubbles by the immense weight of the ice above, is so optically transparent that photons can travel over 100 meters through it before being absorbed or scattered. The ice itself is the detector medium. When a high-energy neutrino strikes a water molecule in the ice, the resulting charged particle produces Cherenkov light that radiates outward through the crystalline lattice, captured by the optical modules. The pattern of light hits across the cubic kilometer. The timing, the intensity, the geometry reveals the direction and energy of the incoming neutrino with remarkable precision. IceCube was designed to detect cosmic neutrinos. Neutrinos not from the sun or the atmosphere, but from the most extreme environments in the universe. Active galactic nuclei, supermassive black holes at the centers of galaxies, consuming matter and emitting jets of particles at nearly the speed of light. Gamma ray bursts, the most energetic explosion since the Big Bang, visible across billions of light years, colliding neutron stars. The acceleration regions of cosmic rays. In 2013, IceCube detected the first confirmed high-energy cosmic neutrinos, neutrinos with energies millions of times greater than solar neutrinos, arriving from outside the Milky Way. The era of high-energy neutrino astronomy had begun, and in 2017, IceCube achieved something extraordinary. A single high-energy neutrino designated IceCube 170922A arrived from a specific direction in the sky. Within seconds, an automated alert was sent to telescopes around the world. Gamma-ray telescopes, X-ray satellites, optical telescopes, and radio dishes all pointed at the source. They found a blazar, a galaxy with a supermassive black hole, whose jet is pointed directly at Earth, designated TXS 0506 plus 056, located 4 billion light-years away. The neutrino and the electromagnetic radiation came from the same source, 4 billion light-years away. For the first time in history, a cosmic object had been observed simultaneously in both neutrinos and photons, 2 completely independent channels, carrying complementary information about the same cataclysmic event. Multi-messenger astronomy. The dream of observing the universe through multiple channels simultaneously became reality. And then, looking back through IceCube's archival data, physicists found something even more remarkable. Between September 2014 and March 2015, 3 years before the real-time detection, IceCube had recorded an excess of neutrinos from the same patch of sky. The same blazar had been flaring in neutrinos years earlier. The archive contained the evidence. The ghost had been speaking. No one had been listening. Now we were. This is what multi-messenger astronomy means. The universe has been sending us messages on 2 channels. Light the channel we have been reading for 400 years. since Galileo first pointed a telescope at the sky. And neutrinos, the channel that has been broadcasting since the birth of the universe, carrying information from places that light cannot escape, from events that light cannot fully describe, from the deepest and most violent processes in the cosmos. For the first time, we can hear both channels. We can cross-reference. We can triangulate. The universe is no longer a monologue delivered in light. It is a conversation, and neutrinos are the second voice. There is one more mystery, perhaps the strangest of all, and it comes in two layers. First, why is the neutrino's mass so absurdly small? The electron weighs 0.511 MeV. The up quark weighs about 2 MeV. The top quark, the heaviest known particle, weighs 173,000 MeV. These masses span a wide range, but they are all generated by the same mechanism: interaction with the Higgs field. The neutrino's mass, by contrast, is less than 0.1 electron volts, not MeV, EV, at least 5 million times lighter than the electron. If the masses of particles were heights, and the top quark were the height of Mount Everest, the neutrino would be less than 2 millimeters tall. Something is profoundly different about how the neutrino acquires its mass. The most elegant explanation is the seesaw mechanism, a theoretical framework that links the neutrino's tiny mass to the existence of an extremely heavy partner particle that has never been detected. The mathematics is beautiful in its simplicity. The light neutrino mass is inversely proportional to the heavy partner's mass. The heavier the partner, the lighter the neutrino. Like a seesaw, one end goes up, the other goes down. If the heavy partner has a mass near the grand unification scale 10 to the 15th GeV, a trillion times heavier than the proton, then the seesaw naturally produces a neutrino mass in the range we observe. The neutrino is light because its partner is heavy. The whisper is quiet because the scream is loud. And the heavy partner, if it existed in the early universe, could have decayed asymmetrically, producing slightly more matter than antimatter, explaining leptogenesis. The seesaw mechanism is unproven. The heavy partner has not been detected. Its mass is far beyond the reach of any existing particle accelerator, but the mathematics is compelling, and it connects three of the deepest mysteries in physics: why the neutrino is so light, why matter dominates over antimatter, and whether the neutrino is a Majorana particle. If the seesaw is right, all three questions have the same answer. Second, the possibility that hidden neutrinos exist, neutrinos that do not even interact through the weak force, particles so ghostly that they make ordinary neutrinos look sociable by comparison. The standard model contains three neutrino flavors: electron, muon, tau, each participating in weak interactions. But several experiments over the past 2 decades have produced anomalous results that do not fit the three-flavor oscillation model. The LSND experiment at Los Alamos and the Mini-Boon experiment at Fermilab both observed excesses of electron-neutrino events that the standard three-flavor framework cannot explain. The reactor antineutrino anomaly, a reanalysis of reactor neutrino data, suggested that approximately 6% of reactor antineutrinos were going missing at short distances before the standard oscillation could take effect. One explanation for these anomalies is the existence of a fourth neutrino, a sterile neutrino. Sterile because it does not interact through any of the three forces of the standard model: not electromagnetic, not strong, not weak. It interacts only through gravity and through its mixing with the three active neutrinos. It is the ghost of ghosts, the shadow of shadows, an entity so disconnected from the material world that even the weak force, the feeblest interaction known, cannot reach it. If sterile neutrinos exist, they are a candidate for dark matter, the invisible mass that makes up 27% of the universe's energy content. Dark matter does not emit light. It does not absorb light. It does not interact electromagnetically. It reveals itself only through gravity, through the way galaxies rotate faster than they should, the way light bends around galaxy clusters more than it should, the way the cosmic microwave background carries subtle imprints of an invisible gravitational scaffold. We know dark matter is there. We do not know what it is. And a sterile neutrino, heavy, stable, gravitationally active, invisible to every force except gravity, is one of the leading candidates. The Quran speaks of the unseen al-Ghaib as having structure, having inhabitants, having layers. The unseen is not simply the stuff we cannot see. It is an organized reality, a domain with its own physics, its own beings, its own laws. The visible world, Alam al-Shahada, is one layer. The unseen world is another, and within the unseen, Islamic cosmology describes multiple levels: the world of angels, Alam al-Malakut, the world of divine power, Alam al-Jabarut, and the world of pure divinity, Alam al-Lahut. Layer upon layer of invisible reality, each more removed from the material world than the last. The physics of neutrinos mirrors this architecture with uncanny precision. The visible world is made of ordinary matter, protons, neutrons, electrons, interacting through all four forces. One layer deeper, ordinary neutrinos interact through the weak force, but nothing else, passing through the visible world like ghosts. One layer deeper still, sterile neutrinos, if they exist, interact through nothing but gravity, invisible even to the weak force that is the neutrino's last connection to the material world. And one layer deeper, dark energy, the mysterious force accelerating the expansion of the universe, interacts with nothing at all except the geometry of space-time itself. Layer upon layer of invisible reality, each more disconnected from the material world than the last, each more ghostly, each more hidden. The physics does not prove the theology, but the architecture is the same. In Hindu cosmology, the concept of kosha sheaths describes the layers of reality that surround and penetrate the human being. The outermost layer is Annamaya kosha, the physical body, the food sheath, the visible material form. Beneath it is Pranamaya kosha, the breath sheath, the life force, invisible but felt. Deeper still is Manomaya kosha, the mental sheath, the realm of thought and emotion. Then Vijnanamaya kosha, the wisdom sheath, the realm of discernment and insight. And at the deepest level, Anandamaya kosha, the bliss sheath, the innermost layer, closest to the Atman, closest to Brahman, the most hidden and the most real. The universe is layered in the same way. Matter is the outermost sheath, visible, tangible, measurable, the reality we navigate every day. Neutrinos are the breath sheath, invisible, everywhere, flowing through all things, felt only through the most exquisitely sensitive instruments humanity has ever built. Sterile neutrinos, if they exist, are the wisdom sheath present throughout the cosmos but disconnected from almost all interactions, touching reality only through the gentlest of forces. Dark energy is the bliss sheath, the deepest layer, the most mysterious, the most powerful force in the universe, and yet the most hidden, accelerating the expansion of everything while remaining fundamentally unknown. And at the center, at the core that all the sheaths surround, is the question that every layer points toward. What is reality itself made of? What lies beneath all the layers? What is the Atman of the universe? The neutrino does not answer this question. No particle can. But the neutrino proves that the question has depth, literal depth, measurable depth. Reality has layers. What is visible is not all there, is not even close. The universe you can see, the stars, the galaxies, the cosmic microwave background, the entire electromagnetic spectrum from radio to gamma, constitutes approximately 5% of the universe's total energy content. 5%, the remaining 95% is invisible. 27% is dark matter, possibly including sterile neutrinos, detectable only through gravity. 68% is dark energy detectable only through the acceleration of cosmic expansion. The visible universe, the world of light and matter and tangible substance, is a thin film on the surface of something vast and hidden and strange. We have been reading a book by the light of a candle, and the candle illuminates 5 pages out of 100. The neutrino is the first messenger from below the surface, the first whisper from the invisible world, the first proof that the majority of reality is hidden, and it tells us there is more, far more. Below what you can see, below what you can touch, below what you can detect with the most sensitive instruments ever built, there is more. The ghost has layers, and we have only begun to peel them back. Here is what we have learned. A particle exists that passes through everything. Through your body, 100 trillion per second, through the earth, as if it were empty space. Through a wall of lead, a light year thick, without slowing down. It has no electric charge, no color charge, almost no mass. It interacts with matter so rarely that a single neutrino can cross the entire observable universe, 93 billion light-years, without touching a single atom. It is the most abundant massive particle in the universe, outnumbering atoms by a factor of 1 billion, and it is almost completely invisible. This particle changes its identity as it travels. It oscillates between 3 flavors: electron, muon, tau, never settling, never fixed, never permanently one thing. This oscillation broke the standard model of physics, the most successful theory ever constructed, by proving that neutrinos have mass when the theory predicted they were massless. This particle may be its own antiparticle. If so, it is the most paradoxical object in the known universe, a thing that is simultaneously itself and its opposite. And this paradox may be the reason anything exists at all, because the Majorana nature of the neutrino could explain the matter-antimatter asymmetry that allowed the universe to contain atoms rather than annihilating into empty radiation. This particle speaks from the most extreme environments in the cosmos, from the cores of collapsing stars, from supermassive black holes, from the first second after the Big Bang. It carries messages that light cannot carry, from places light cannot escape, about events that light cannot fully describe, and we have only just begun to listen. The neutrino is the messenger from the invisible world, and the invisible world is not a small place. It is 95% of everything. Every major religion on earth teaches that visible reality is not all there is. That beneath, behind, beyond the world of the senses, lies a deeper reality, vaster, more fundamental, more real than the material world that our eyes and hands and instruments can reach. This is not a peripheral teaching. It is not a minor theme. It is the central claim of every major spiritual tradition, the axis around which everything else revolves. And the neutrino confirms it. Not the theological content. The neutrino says nothing about God, about salvation, about the soul, but the structural claim, the architecture. The assertion that the visible world is a fraction of reality, that the majority of what exists is hidden, that the most abundant and most powerful forces in the universe operate beyond the reach of human perception. This claim, which has been made by every religion for thousands of years, is now the consensus position of modern physics. Let me trace this through the traditions, one by one. Christianity has always insisted that the invisible is more real than the visible. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians states it explicitly: "We look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. The visible world is temporary. The invisible world is permanent. The visible is the shadow. The invisible is the substance. This is not a metaphysical speculation. It is the organizing principle of Christian theology. The most important realities in Christianity, God, the Holy Spirit, the soul, grace, the kingdom of heaven, are all invisible. They cannot be seen with the eyes. They cannot be measured with instruments. They cannot be photographed or weighed or captured in a laboratory. And yet Christianity insists that they are more real, more powerful, more fundamental than anything that can be seen or measured or photographed. The doctrine of kenosis, the self-emptying of God, provides a remarkably precise parallel to the neutrino. In Philippians 2:6-7, Paul describes Christ as one who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself. The Greek word is ekenosin, taking the form of a servant, becoming human. God did not cease to be God, but God set aside every visible attribute of divinity, omnipotence, glory, majesty, the radiance that would blind any mortal who beheld it, and entered the world in the most humble, most hidden, most undetectable form possible. A baby in a manger, a carpenter from Nazareth, a man who could be arrested, beaten, and killed. The infinite, disguised as the finite. The creator, disguised as the created. The all-powerful, disguised as the powerless. The early church fathers debated for centuries what exactly was emptied. Cyril of Alexandria argued that the divine nature remained fully present. Nothing was lost, but the visible manifestation was set aside. The glory was hidden, not destroyed. The power was concealed, not diminished. Gregory of Nyssa described the incarnation as the invisible made visible, not by acquisition of the visible, but by condescension to the visible. God did not gain a body so much as hide within one. The kenosis was not subtraction, it was concealment. The fullness of God, hidden inside the most ordinary human form. The neutrino is the kenotic particle. It has emptied itself of every detectable property. No charge, no color, almost no mass. It has set aside every attribute that would make it visible, measurable, interactable. It enters the material world in the most humble, most hidden, most undetectable form possible. And yet, like the kenotic Christ, it is not diminished by its hiddenness. It is the most abundant, massive particle in the universe. It carries 99% of the energy released in the most violent events in the cosmos. It may be the reason that matter exists at all. The power is not reduced by the hiddenness. The power is expressed through the hiddenness. The emptying is the revelation. The apophatic tradition in Christianity, the tradition of negative theology, of knowing God by what God is not, maps onto neutrino physics with startling directness. Pseudo-Dionysius, whom we encountered in the Light series, insisted that every positive statement about God must be negated. God is not a being. God is not good in the way creatures are good. God is not wise in the way humans are wise. God is not powerful in the way kings are powerful. Every attribute we assign to God, based on our experience of the created world, is inadequate. The only way to approach the truth about God is through negation, by stripping away every false attribution, every limited concept, every human projection, until what remains is the divine darkness, the cloud of unknowing, the luminous absence that is more present than any presence. The neutrino is known in exactly this way. We define it by what it is not. It is not charged. It is not colored. It is not massive in any significant sense. It does not interact electromagnetically. It does not interact through the strong force. It does not interact through the weak force at any distance greater than the diameter of an atomic nucleus. Strip away every interaction, every attribute, every detectable property, and what remains is the neutrino. We know it by its absence. We detect it by what it does not do. We identify it by the space it leaves in the equations when everything else has been accounted for. The neutrino is the apophatic particle known through negation, defined by absence, present in the silence that remains when all noise has been removed. Buddhism's understanding of the hidden layers of reality begins with Nagarjuna, the 2nd century philosopher who, alongside the Buddha himself, is considered the most influential thinker in the Buddhist tradition. Nagarjuna's doctrine of the two truths distinguishes between conventional truth, samvriti satya, the world, as it appears to ordinary perception, and ultimate truth, paramartha satya, the world as it actually is. Conventional truth is the visible world, the world of solid objects, definite properties, stable identities, the world where a table is a table, a mountain is a mountain, a neutrino is a neutrino. This world is not false. Nagarjuna is not an idealist who denies the reality of the physical world. This world is real, but it is not the whole truth. It is a partial truth, a truth conditioned by the limitations of human perception, by the categories of human thought, by the conventions of human language. It is the 5%. Ultimate truth is what remains when the conventions are removed. And what remains, Nagarjuna argued, is sunyata emptiness. Not nothing, not void, not non-existence. Emptiness of inherent existence, the absence of any fixed, independent, self-sustaining essence in any phenomenon. Everything that exists dependently arising in relation to conditions, existing in relation to other things, defined in relation to what it is not. Nothing exists on its own. Nothing has its own independent nature. Everything is empty of self-nature, and this emptiness is not a deprivation. It is the ground. It is the condition that makes all existence possible. Because nothing is fixed, everything can change. Because nothing is independent, everything is connected. Because nothing has self-nature, everything has potential. The neutrino is the most empty particle in physics, empty of charge, empty of color, empty of significant mass, empty of almost all interaction. And this emptiness is precisely what gives it its unique properties. Because it is empty of electromagnetic interaction, it can pass through everything. Because it is empty of strong interaction, it is free from the nuclear bonds that trap quarks inside protons. Because it is empty of significant mass, it travels at nearly the speed of light. Its emptiness is not a deficiency. Its emptiness is its power. The less it has, the more it can do. The less it interacts, the farther it reaches. The more empty it is, the more of the universe it pervades. Nagarjuna would recognize the neutrino as the ultimate teaching on sunyata, expressed in the language of matter. A thing so empty of inherent properties that it passes through everything. A thing so free of fixed identity that it oscillates between three forms. A thing so devoid of self-nature that it might be its own opposite. And yet, this most empty of things is the most abundant. The universe, by number, is made of emptiness. The Heart Sutra's declaration, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form," is not poetry, it is particle physics. The Yogacara school of Buddhism adds another layer. The Yogacara philosophers Asanga and Vasubandhu, 4th century, taught that ordinary consciousness perceives the world through a series of transformations that distort and simplify reality. The raw data of experience is filtered, categorized, labeled, and packaged by the mind into the neat world of objects and properties that we take for granted. But beneath this constructed world, beneath the labels and categories, lies the storehouse consciousness, alaya vijnana, a deep, hidden layer of awareness that contains the seeds of all experience, all perception, all reality. The storehouse consciousness is invisible. It operates beneath the threshold of ordinary awareness. It is the hidden ground from which the visible world arises. The universe has a storehouse. It is made of neutrinos, of dark matter, of dark energy, the invisible 95% that generates the gravitational scaffold on which the visible 5% is draped. The galaxies you see in a telescope are arranged along filaments of dark matter that you cannot see. The expansion of the universe is driven by dark energy that you cannot detect. The matter in your body exists because neutrinos broke the symmetry between matter and antimatter in a process you cannot observe. The visible world arises from the invisible ground. The storehouse generates the surface. The hidden produces the seen. Islam's teaching on the unseen al-Ghaib is not peripheral to the faith. It is the first quality of the believer. The Quran opens its description of the righteous with this: those who believe in the unseen, Al-Baqarah 2-3, not those who believe in God, that comes later, not those who pray, that comes later. The first quality, the foundation, the prerequisite for everything else, belief in the unseen, faith that the invisible is real, that what cannot be perceived by the senses is not less real for being imperceptible, that the hidden world is the foundation on which the visible world rests. Al-Ghazali, whose theology of light we explored in the Light series, argued in his Ihya Ulum al-Din, the revival of the religious sciences, that the physical senses are the lowest form of perception. Above them is the intellect which perceives truths that the senses cannot access, such as mathematical relationships and logical necessities. Above the intellect is the heart qalb, which perceives spiritual realities that neither the senses nor the intellect can reach. And above the heart is direct divine illumination, the light that reveals the unseen not through inference or deduction but through immediate experience. Each level of perception reveals a layer of reality that the levels below it cannot access. The senses show you the visible world, the intellect shows you the logical world, the heart shows you the spiritual world, and divine illumination shows you the divine world. The physicist's instruments are a new level of perception above the senses, alongside the intellect, and they reveal a layer of reality that neither the senses nor the unaided intellect can access. The neutrino detector buried a mile underground perceives a world that the human eye cannot see. The Ice Cube Observatory at the South Pole perceives messages from supermassive black holes 4 billion light-years away. The Dune experiment will perceive the difference between neutrino and antineutrino oscillation, a difference that may explain why anything exists. Each instrument reveals a new layer, and each layer confirms the Quranic premise: the unseen is real, the unseen is vast, the unseen is the majority. Rumi, the 13th century Sufi poet whose Masnavi is sometimes called the Quran in Persian, wrote, "The truth was a mirror in the hands of God. It fell and broke into pieces. Everybody took a piece of it, and they looked at it and thought they had the truth. The visible world is one piece, the neutrino is another, dark matter is another, dark energy is another. No single piece contains the whole truth, but each piece reflects something real, and the recognition that the mirror is broken, that the truth is larger than any single fragment, is the beginning of wisdom. The neutrino is one shard of the mirror, and what it reflects is the vastness of what remains hidden." Ibn Arabi, the great Andalusian Sufi metaphysician, the greatest master, Al-Sheikh Al-Akbar, taught that the universe is the self-disclosure of God Ta'ali. God, who is absolutely hidden in his essence, Al-Dat, manifests through successive levels of revelation, each level revealing some attributes while concealing others. The material world is the outermost level of tajalli, the most revealed, and simultaneously the most concealed, because the very concreteness of material things hides the divine reality within them. You see the tree, but not the divine name that sustains it. You see the star, but not the light of the divine attribute that ignites it. The visible conceals by revealing. The manifest hides by manifesting. The neutrino inverts this pattern. It is the thing that reveals by concealing. It is hidden, maximally hidden, more hidden than any other particle, and its very hiddenness reveals the structure of reality. By being invisible, it teaches us that the invisible is the majority. By being undetectable, it teaches us that the undetectable is the foundation. By passing through everything without a trace, it teaches us that the most fundamental things leave no trace. The neutrino is the anti-tajalli, the disclosure through concealment, the revelation through absence. Hinduism's oldest and most radical insight, the insight of the Upanishads, is that the hidden ground of the universe and the hidden ground of the self are the same reality. Brahman, the ultimate, the absolute, the ground of all being, is not a distant deity. Brahman is the unseen substance of everything that exists, and Atman, the deepest self, the awareness beneath all experience, is Brahman. Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. The method by which the Upanishadic sages approach Brahman is neti neti, not this, not that. Brahman is not the body, not the mind, not the emotions, not the intellect. Not any object that can be perceived, not any concept that can be thought, not any word that can be spoken. Brahman is what remains when every limited identification has been stripped away. The residue of radical negation. The silent, invisible, infinite ground that persists when everything visible, thinkable, and nameable has been removed. This is how the neutrino was discovered, not by seeing it, not by measuring it, not by detecting any positive signal. Pauli discovered the neutrino by noticing what was missing, the energy that disappeared in beta decay. The neutrino was the residue of negation, the thing that remained when everything visible had been accounted for, the invisible ground that explained the gap between what the equations predicted and what the instruments measured. The neutrino is the neti-neti particle, not charged neti, not massive neti, not interacting neti, not visible neti. What remains when all of these negations have been applied is the neutrino. What remains when all limited identifications have been stripped away is Brahman. The method is the same. The structure of discovery is the same. The Kena Upanishad, one of the oldest and most concentrated philosophical texts in the Hindu canon, asks, by whom directed does the mind go toward its objects? By whom commanded does the first breath move? By whom will do people utter speech? What god directs the eyes and ears? And the answer, that which is not seen by the eye, but by which the eye sees. Know that to be Brahman, not what people worship as an object. Brahman is not an object of perception. Brahman is the condition that makes perception possible. Not the light, but the seeing. Not the sound, but the hearing. Not the thought, but the awareness. Not anything that can be pointed to, but the invisible ground upon which all things stand. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad extends this insight with the most famous dialogue in Hindu philosophy. Yajnavalkya, the sage, is asked by his wife Maitreyi to explain the nature of Brahman. He begins, as a lump of salt thrown into water dissolves and cannot be taken out again, though wherever you taste the water it is salty, so too, this great being, infinite, boundless, is nothing but a mass of awareness. Brahman is not an object in the universe. Brahman is dissolved in the universe the way salt is dissolved in water. You cannot extract it. You cannot isolate it. You cannot point to it and say, there it is. But it is present everywhere, in everything, flavoring all of reality with its presence. It is the taste that cannot be separated from the water, the awareness that cannot be separated from experience, the hidden that cannot be separated from the visible. The neutrino is dissolved in the universe in precisely this way. You cannot extract a neutrino from the space around you, they pass through every container. You cannot isolate one, they interact so rarely that detection requires decades of patience. You cannot point to one and say there it is. By the time you have detected the evidence of its passage, it is already 100,000 kilometers away. But it is present everywhere, in everything, passing through all of reality at every moment. 336 neutrinos per cubic centimeter of space throughout the entire observable universe. The salt dissolved in the water of the cosmos, present everywhere, graspable nowhere. The neutrino is not an object of detection, in any ordinary sense. You cannot hold it, you cannot see it, you cannot bounce light off it. You can only detect the consequences of its extraordinarily rare interactions: 2 flashes in a tank of water, a single argon atom in a swimming pool of dry cleaning fluid, a ring of Cherenkov light in Antarctic ice. The neutrino is known by its effects. Brahman is known by its effects. Neither can be perceived directly. Both are known through what they make possible. Here is the honest assessment. The structural parallel between the neutrino and the religious concept of the unseen is the strongest parallel in this series. Stronger than the parallel between light's timelessness and God's eternity. Stronger than the parallel between quantum measurement and divine consciousness. Because this parallel is not speculative. It is quantitative, it is measurable, it is confirmed by every experiment in modern cosmology. The religions say the visible world is a fraction of reality. The majority of what exists is hidden, invisible, beyond the reach of the senses. Physics says the visible universe, all ordinary matter, all electromagnetic radiation, everything that interacts with light, constitutes approximately 5% of the total energy content of the universe. The remaining 95% is invisible. It does not emit light. It does not absorb light. It does not interact with any of the instruments that have defined the history of astronomy. And yet it is there. It is real. It is the majority. This is not a metaphor. This is not an interpretation. This is the measured composition of the universe, determined by the Planck satellite's observations of the cosmic microwave background, confirmed by observations of galaxy rotation curves, gravitational lensing, baryon acoustic oscillations, type Ia supernova distances, and the large-scale structure of the cosmic web. By every independent method of measurement, the answer is the same. The universe is mostly invisible. The seen is the minority. The unseen is the majority. The skeptical response: this parallel is structural, not substantive. Physics says the universe is mostly dark matter and dark energy. Religion says the universe is mostly spirit and divine reality. The fact that both say mostly invisible does not mean they are talking about the same thing. Dark matter is not God. Neutrinos are not angels. The invisible world of physics and the invisible world of theology may share a structure but not a substance. This is fair, and I will not claim otherwise. The neutrino does not prove the existence of God, of the soul, of heaven, of angels, of any theological entity. The neutrino proves that the universe is mostly invisible. Religion claims that the universe is mostly invisible. The overlap is structural. Whether the structure points to the same underlying reality, whether the physical, invisible, and the theological invisible are aspects of a single truth, is a question that neither physics nor theology can answer alone. But consider this. For 400 years, from Galileo's telescope to the Hubble Space Telescope, from Leeuwenhoek's microscope to the Large Hadron Collider, science has been a project of making the invisible visible, extending human perception into domains the senses cannot reach. And at every stage of that extension, the same discovery has been repeated. There is more. more than the eye can see, more than the instrument can detect, more than the theory predicts. The universe is always larger, always stranger, always more hidden than we imagined. Galileo pointed his telescope at the sky and found moons around Jupiter that no one had seen. Newton developed mathematics that revealed gravitational forces that no one could see. Maxwell unified electricity and magnetism and predicted radio waves that no human sense could detect. Einstein predicted gravitational waves ripples in space-time that took a century and the most sensitive instrument in history to measure. And every advance in detection reveals not a smaller mystery, but a larger one. Every time we pull back the curtain, we find another curtain behind it. Every time we map the invisible, we discover a vaster invisible beyond it. The universe is an onion of hiddenness, and the neutrino is one of its deepest layers, but not the deepest. Sterile neutrinos, if they exist, are deeper. Dark matter is deeper. Dark energy is deeper. And beyond dark energy, what? We do not know. The layers continue. The depth is inexhaustible. This pattern, the inexhaustible hiddenness of reality, is precisely what the religions have been teaching. Not the specific content of what is hidden, but the structure, the architecture, the bottomless depth, the layers beneath layers beneath layers. The Quran's Al-Ghaib, the Hindu Kosha, the Buddhist Alaya Vijnana, the Christian things that are unseen, all of them pointing to the same structural truth. Reality has depth, invisible depth, and the depth is greater than the surface. 100 trillion ghost particles are passing through your body right now. They carry messages from the core of the sun, from the death of stars, from the first second of the universe. They have no charge, no color, almost no mass. They change identity as they travel. They may be their own opposite. They may be the reason you exist, and you feel nothing. Absolutely nothing. The invisible world is not empty. It is full. It is the majority. And it has been passing through you, sustaining you, creating the conditions for your existence every moment of your life. You have never noticed. You were never meant to notice. The ghost does not ask to be seen. It asks only to be believed in, to be taken seriously, to be acknowledged as real. The unseen is real. Physics has confirmed it. The religions always knew.